And welcome back to Good Morning Kenya. My name is Mike Migu. We are glad that you are still watching KBC Channel 1. Now, time for Women at the Forefront. And today we want to focus on how we can rewrite the African narrative and have a conversation that honors our past without being confined by it. And this coming from a film developed by Gina Mutune, who is a film producer and director, and it's a conversation. I think the themes explored within the film are conversations that I think are timely, especially now, not only for Kenya but for the continent of Africa. Gina Mutune is the film producer and director. Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having us.
Karibu sana. And also Apondi Nyangaya is an actress. She features or portrays a character named Florence Rabetti. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing very good. I'm
yes.
Glad to be up here.
Yes.
Nice and early.
Let's get into the conversation. And Gina, I'll start with you because this is your inspiration. This is your film.
Yes, yes.
Talk to us briefly about the inspiration behind the stories, because it's touching on very important themes that revolve around land inheritance, grief and mental health, women empowerment, general trauma and tradition versus innovation.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Cocoa Dreams for me was a culmination of many experiences as a woman. And I was inspired by many women in my life to really see how they were really forging their own voice, fighting for what are basic human rights, just to live basically in a society. It's just that it happened that we used the canvas of Muhoroni to bring out the story, but it's a story that has universal themes that are relevant everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah, so of course I've watched my mom for many years now just forge her voice, fight for ownership, fight for just basic rights, and just fight to be looked as a overall image bearer of God. And that's just the grounding of the story, is that these women are whole, not lacking in anything. And so of course now we ground that basic understanding in the film. And the story of Cocoa is a nuclear physicist who's played by Kit Kiare, who also happens to be Apondi's daughter, and how she comes to bury Dana. Dana is grandma in Muhoroni, and discovers that she's the sole custodian of this 10-acre land, and she decides that she wants to plant cocoa, and everything unravels from there. And so it's basically a story about a family unraveling through grief. It's basically a family of siblings trying to find, will they be able to evolve their relationships to a place of growth, or will they fall apart? So yeah, if you look at the story, it's a story about your life, or if you really look at it, it's a story about someone in your circle.
Yes.
Yes.
Apondi, you portrayed the character of a matriarch.
Yes.
You know, in this series, what first drew you to this character? What stood out?
She's the she-elephant. She comes as 10,000. She doesn't just come from yesterday.
She is a one-man army.
She is the one who carries so much. She is the bearer of the dreams, the wildest dreams of her great grandmother. And she is also the permission giver. So she comes to, not only does she come bearing a lot of power, but she comes to open doors. I looked at that woman and I said, well, that woman, that's who I am being today. Because I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, and I'm a human rights agent. I've worked in the human rights sector for years on end. I'm a feminist. I walk among the strong, and we open doors. Feminists open doors for everybody, and just ensure that everybody gets the opportunities. I've worked with some really strong women I've worked with Phoebe Asio, I've worked with Grace Ogot, Wangari Maathai. Those are women that I looked up to and held my hands in many ways. And so when I saw this character, I said, honestly, this is the right time for me to get back on stage.
Yes.
Because I'm also an actress.
Yeah.
Apart from being a change agent, it's the right script designed exactly for me.
And you feel it's something that is talking about matters that affect within the contemporary African society. You feel that it touches on that?
Absolutely. It touches on the freedoms that ought to be available for every African, and the doors that were that have remained closed. It talks about a lot of colonial structures that came into play that disrupted the ways in which things could have been better. And so the mix of the cultures, some inherited, some created, some traditions, have been brought down to us in ways that no longer work for very many people. And so this script is about challenging what has been created that is untidy and disraveling that. Yes.
You know, as I had put earlier, the film explores several themes. We're talking about land inheritance through to traditions versus innovation. Why do these themes matter now? And are we having honest conversations around those themes?
I don't think we are, and I think it's very sad, because one of the ways for economic empowerment is land inheritance. And so if you're going to take that away from women, immediately what you're doing is you're disabling them from having economic freedoms. And you see, so now we have to look at this narrative. Who said that? Who said that this can't work? You know, we've seen women are nurturers, and you have heard this saying over and over again, if you feed a woman, you feed a village. Now, they have this nurturing ability. Now, I stand here, you know, when we start saying this message, it's almost like, oh, people think, oh, you're man bashing, and that's not it. You know, I think for Africa to really evolve in its greatness, there has to be a collaborative effort between the man and the woman in terms of pushing African forward. And we have to have honest conversations about our cultural beliefs and ideologies that are not progressing this forward, and let them go. Because if you ask any general man, would you want your daughter to be treated the way, quote unquote, verse you've treated either the wife or you saw your grandmother being treated? They generally are so overly protective over the daughters. But then I say, but this daughter, if you don't change how you're treating your wife, your daughter is likely going to marry another man who's going to treat her like that. And so I think, you know, we have to have those honest conversations. And I love it. The women do this. They sit in chamas and they think, how are we going to change? What are we going to change? And I think men must embrace this. Also, how are we going to change what an African man looks like? Because I think holding on to what, quote unquote, tradition 100% says is going to be a disadvantage position for you and your lineage. Because whether we like it or not, change is constant. And the world will not stop empowering women. And the women will not stop pushing the boundaries on what they can be and what they can do. You know, and we clearly, you know, even when people are saying, oh, you know, let's fundamentally ground this in the Christian ideology, you see Moses allowing the daughters of Zipporah to actually go and inherit land. Why did he do that? Because it was going to change the demographics. It was going to change, it was going to change how these women are. It was going to change what was going to happen to their children. They were widows. And so they were given land, and Moses knew if he gives them this land, then poverty already is going to be cancelled out to the next generation. So I think the messaging has to be clear. It's a collaborative effort. And I don't think shining on the woman and saying the woman is an equal human being takes away from the spotlight on the man. I think that's a very scarcity mentality. And so far, it has not done anything great for Africa, right?
She's smiling. But I have a question, because I've seen the trailer, and I think there's an expectation that is coming out, placed on the women, because they are represented as protectors of culture, but at the same time, challengers of it.
Absolutely.
Do you think there is a burden on them when it comes to the preservation of tradition and the modernization of society? Apondi?
Yes, there would be a burden. And you see, there's not only modernization, I don't even know what that means, right? Because time is passing, and some things may be referred to as modern and may not necessarily be modern. They just change. I would like to think that modern means that it's beneficial to everybody and leaves nobody behind, no matter what demographic group. But in response to that question, our environments are structured by religion. They're structured by economics, structured by education, exposure. There's so much that comes into play to structure our environment. Just riding on something that Gina said.
Yes.
If we think about Christianity, and she spoke about Moses. Moses lived with his father-in-law for more than 40 years. By the time he was going back to Egypt to set the children of Israel free, he was above age 80, but it meant that he had lived with his wife and his wife's family for more than 40 years. And so Moses, as an example, is an example of somebody who the matriarchs gave so much strength, because even in the house of Pharaoh, he lived with the sister of Pharaoh. Yes. So the matriarchs have really shaped his life. And he was even able to live in his in-laws' home. We are in a place today where we are saying the environment must be provided that is healthy for everybody to thrive. If everybody thrives, then society thrives.
Yes.
There's a great disadvantage, Mike, if your father disenfranchises your mother and throws you out, and the entire patriarchy throws you and your mother out. Not only will your mother suffer on behalf of everybody, but you will suffer. The boy child is not protected if their mother is not protected.
And these are the things, things happening within society even to date.
Yes, yes, yes.
And, you know, Gina, do you think the film... Actually, the film asks a very important question. Can we honor where we come from without being confined with it? Because we are talking about issues that define our past, colonialism, our culture, traditions. Can we have an honest conversation here without being confined by it?
Absolutely, and there are brilliant things about our culture, you know. First, if you just start with the food and how healthy majority of the food is and nutrient dense these foods are, this is brilliant. Our ancestors knew science, they knew magnesium, they knew vitamins without quite saying that, but they knew if you eat this herbs and this, your body will feel better. So just nutrition, if we're just even to reverse the obesity and the diabetes trajectory that the country is headed towards, if we just touch into traditional foods, already you can see you're already beginning to restore and heal the society. So there are brilliant things about that. The idea that we think of virtues like kindness, like I exist because you exist, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's not this whole capitalism, whatever, greed that is just, you know, conquer, capture everything for yourself, you know. It's always like, even if I grow, how do I build people around me? And I'm not talking about people who like to exploit boundaries, because also there's a flip of that. So I'm just talking about us really having those honest conversation. Is this servicing us? No, let it go. Follow something else, you know, that is more beneficial to your children. Because what I find is very tragic is many times men will say that they are following, quote unquote, these African traditions, and they're listening to old men who will give them advice and they will check out. and leave this man with a terrible decision to face it for the next 50 years of his life. I don't know whether it makes sense. So if you're going to advise this man, oh yes, you know, your wife is more empowered, leave her, you know, everything, find a second wife. So, quote unquote, that man says, oh yes, that is the way African men should be. They should marry.
At that point, I don't think you are even thinking about it from your own perspective.
Right. So now this guy checks out after 20 years. God, I mean, let's just say he has long life.
Yes.
But now this young man at 30 that he has advised that has 60 years to live through the mess of building a second family, of losing the children from his first marriage. You know, and that's what I'm saying. You have to really think, is this servicing even the boy child himself? No, it's not.
I think it's a time for introspection.
Absolutely,
You
deep
have to
introspection.
look deep within yourself to understand things. And upon, you know, many African matriarchs are celebrated as pillars of strength.
Absolutely.
But rarely do we examine how they can also become gatekeepers of silence, pressure, generation trauma.
Yes.
When you're portraying this character, did you have to rethink the role that older women play sometimes in sustaining systems that maybe limit younger women?
That I would have had to have thought about at the personal level, because this particular woman was designed to kick her way through the barriers that society had created for women in her generation. So she's actually one of the matriarchs that we look up to and say, these are the firsts, the ones who went before her, us, Wangari Maathai type woman, who stood up and said, you know what, enough is enough, it ends with me, I shall be honored. Somebody who was able to get a Nobel Peace Prize because of the challenging of the status quo that she did. So this woman is actually designed without the shackles, because she had already kicked them off. But Mike, at my personal, at the Apondi personal level, there's so many shackles that I'm still kicking off, that I have to stand up and to challenge and to remember that if I don't kick this door down, some little girl, and it's my granddaughter, is coming behind me, and she'll find this door closed, and she might not have the wherewithal. I've walked my life with very strong women who have helped us to create spaces where Gina can come along and say, you know what, I'm creating a movie about it, and I will tell this story. So we've told the story, as Wangari Maathai would have said, like the hummingbird, I shall not be silenced. So I will be a hummingbird. And so Gina comes along and she's a hummingbird, and she's created a movie to tell the story. Yes.
And you know, Gina, you can't ignore the fact that there's a new wave of storytelling within Kenya and even the African continent at large. But you know, sometimes there are times when films try to imitate Western storytelling structures, or being reduced to just what you'd say is social messaging. But then again, talk about this new wave of storytelling. Where does Cocoa Dreams fit within these whole?
Cocoa Dreams, that's how we've chosen to say it. But I think it fits, and I can't say it's 100% because of course we've been influenced by Westernization, you know. But to the truth that I understand about it right now, and I didn't just write it alone, you know, I wrote it with Oyunga Pala, who's also a brilliant literature figure in Kenya, just to have a deeper understanding of the culture that I'm portraying the story from. It was just to try and rewrite African stories away from the stereotypes, images of war, stereotyped images of poverty,
Yes.
you know, and stereotyped images of just watu wamefilisika, if I don't have another word, you know. It was just to show these African women or an African family from an empowered state. A dysfunctional, but it's an empowered state. Because Diana's children, I mean, one is a surgeon in Seoul, and the daughter is a nuclear physicist. And these Kenyans exist. If you've integrated with the Kenyans in the diaspora, they are brilliantly, incredibly intelligent.
Yes.
And I just always you know, I think my other, you know, subtle messaging is that brain drain. We need it back in Africa if we're really gonna have Africa to evolve in what it needs to be. So yeah, so we've just tried to tell a different story away from that, capture the beauty, capture the nuances in our culture, what is good, what is bad, how we evolving forward, and really at the heart of it, just show a family struggling to you know, to grow into what society is commanding. Because whether we like it or not, AI is here. Whether we like it or not,
yes,
you know, the foreigners are here. Whether we like it or not, Africa now has to have one voice. These changes are constant. And so I always tell people, you think your village is secure, you wait, foreigners are coming there. And you can just look at Malindi to see and know, oh, you know, there used to be a Swahili tribe there. It's probably not there, because when you go there, you think it's Italians.
It is Italian.
Yeah. So I'm just like, and that's what I'm saying, Africa is evolving, and Africa has always evolved, because then we never had boundaries, and these tribes would migrate back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So that thing is constant. So I say the man who decides, I'm not gonna face this, the gatekeepers that you are talking about, I'm not going to allow this is what and what. I say, it's okay, you can hide at the corner of your house. Yes. The flood won't stop coming. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
It won't. The change is, the change will not. The wheels are already in motion. It won't stop.
Yeah.
So it's either you adapt to the change and find how to position your daughters in a place of advantage, so that they can ride the tide like Apondi has done. She's kicking barriers for her own children, which I've seen my mother do. Even my father choosing to educate 4 girls when everyone plus his brothers were like, why would you take them to higher education? You know, universities outside and everything. But he understood the value of giving this education to women and what it would mean to set us up for now, because somewhat in his own wisdom, he knew women would not be able to be had as managers, as innovators, as directors of companies. And that's what he set us up for. So I just say, I think just, you know, bend into change. It also benefits you. Yes. Because if we are better now, it's less of a burden to them.
Very important, because, and when you look at female-led narratives, Apondi, why do you think it's crucial that African woman is portrayed as an architect of transformation as opposed to just a survivor?
And a beast of burden.
All right, in response to that question, traditionally, the African woman was the historian. So history and the oracles were passed through women. We are no longer told that the history is passed through us, but we are still passing it. From generation to generation, the stories, the narratives are passed through women. And so amplifying their voices like Gina has done through this story is a crucial part of how women show up. Mike, research shows that when you give women resources, it's distributed. When you give men resources, it's saved, and it is kept safely. So, which is also a good thing. So the men come with the keeping of things safely. The women come with the distribution. And it's distribution of all kinds of resources, including the stories. So it will be distributed, it will be apportioned in different places. Ideally, to do good, but sometimes it is also apportioned to harm, because there are they in society who want to to harm others. There's also the mchawi who wants to distribute things that are negative. Yes, so in response to that question, the importance of working with women and amplifying their voices, it reaches everybody. It spreads out and it builds society. So this story has been created to be the part of passing the story and making sure that whatever goodness is carried in it is spread out to people.
And also it's a springboard to start having honest conversation. Absolutely. Because Gina, you know, sometimes grief, the film is not dealing with grief as a moment.
Right.
It's something that is inherited and prolonged.
Right.
But then again, when you look at the African society, the contemporary African society, do we generally have, do we create space for emotional healing, or is there a cultural conditioning that we are supposed to suppress pain and remain strong?
There is, and that cultural conditioning comes from colonialism, and that's also the part of where we can say, does this serve us or not? You know, I think one of the things I have loved about observing the Luo culture is when they do the dages, you know, and this woman really expresses her grief, and I think that should be allowed, you know, because I think after she grieves like that, she doesn't come out to a point of where she's bottled the pain and then she goes like, it's mentally affecting me. But then now if we cry like that, you're told, oh, you're being dramatic, you know, so it's that, you know, that balance, you know, what is serving us? Did we have these systems in place to help us express grief so that it really comes out of our bodies? Then let's honor that. Let that part be created. Now, the dead body sleeping with the woman, I'm not so sure that is serving the woman. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I'm saying. It's a very, you know, it's not even a one, it's not a Gina or an Apondi thing. It's an everyone thing that we have to go into our families and say, what is serving us? What is not serving us? If this is not serving us, there are regions that need to embrace famine, deeper famine, to survive climate change and stuff. Why not evolve? Why still hold on to something that brings little poverty? Is just, you know what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. It's an everyone thing, and everyone is involved in this, you know, from the educators to the policy makers to the mother and the father in the home, thinking through their family structure, you know, inheritance. How are you going to deal with that? Is it crucial that you establish a trust to help your children? Those are things we didn't have. Writing a will is not enough. It takes your children through a court system for a year or so before they get anything, and it can be challenged. The, you know, the business, the what do you call it? Land policy says if you put a trust in place, it helps your children inherit the land easier, or it helps transitioning and whatever. Let's do that. It's service. It works best for your next generation. So, you know, and I find it, you know, it's a level of cowardice, if you would allow me, where we allow change in many things, but these other things, we're like, no, they're sacred, you know? And I just think, you know, you just should name it. You're afraid or you're intimidated or what. But don't give it a sacred name when it's not sacred. When you have your children in the street poor, there's nothing sacred about poverty.
Yes, there's nothing
sacred about poverty. Yes, and so then you ask yourself, what's the use of you having all these things and you have not created systems in which it can pass down to your children with ease? Or also, how are you building your children so that when you pass these things, they're in a better place to handle it? So I just think you have to, you know, and you know, we don't come from a perfect family, but it's just that constant conversations where my mom goes, okay, does this service us? It's not servicing us. Take it out. Let's move forward. Is this servicing us? Not servicing us. You siblings are different. You all have different lives. One of you has found meaning in America. Another one has found meaning here. Another one has found meaning in that other country. Let these children be.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
and Apundi, we have we have actually 1 minute. What is one thing that you would want anyone who watches this film to come out with once they watch it?
That this is going to be so powerful in your life, it will change the way in which you consider the world. You will be transformed, but you also want to watch the series. It's not going to only be one film. There's going to be more.
When is the screening happening?
Oh, the actual screening. So we're having on Friday at Unseen, and then it goes to the park, Anga, in Parklands for 2 screenings
At Diamond Plaza.
At Diamond Plaza.
Yes.
So we have a screening at 5 and at 8, Saturday and Sunday.
You know, there's a lot of things we can explore here the whole day regarding
Absolutely.
the things that are coming out.
Right.
But that was our time, and I thank you for making time to just come and highlight on this, because these are conversations that we need to have as a nation, as Africans, to make sure that we move forward and also recognize where we come from.
Absolutely.
Gina Mutune is the film producer and director of Cocoa Dreams, and also Apondi Nyang'aya stars in that film as the matriarch within that setup of that film. This conversation ends now, and the entire Good Morning Kenya. My name is Mike Migwe. Thank you for tuning in.